Hello everyone and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the MLB DFS Core Pick video for Monday, September 15th. If you're joining me for the very first time, first of all, welcome in. Second of all, this is how today's video will be structured. We'll be going over my core pick. It's going to be 5 players in total, 1 pitcher, 4 hitters. That's going to be based on a combination of past performance versus their respective opponent, as well as some recent history. And then after that, we'll get moved over to my cheat sheet and talk through my top GPP teams to stack for Monday's slate overall. In the morning, I'll be posting my early morning weather report that I have any game that does have a double-digit chance of rain or higher. And then I'll also be listing as many of these starting lineups I can get to throughout the afternoon and early evening. So definitely make sure that you are checking up down in the comment section so that you do have the most up-to-date and relevant information, especially as we do head into lock. But without further ado, we'll get right into it with the core picks. We're going to start off at that pitcher position, and we're going to go with Carlos Rodon here. He's at $10,000, currently averaging over 35 fantasy points per game on the season. He is going against the Minnesota Twins, and he has really good history versus the Minnesota Twins hitters in the past. He had 1 start versus them earlier this year where he put up 43 points, and 2 starts last year where he had 49 and 43 points. So really good history there the last 2 years. He's been pitching really well so far this year. If we take a look in totality what he's been able to do, 16 wins, ERA is at 3.11, and once again averaging just over 35 fantasy points per game at $10,000. I will say for the most part, I'm going to be getting to him and Kyle Bradish as my main 2 pitchers on the slate, but you can feel free to mix and match beyond that if you want to do so at the same time as well. Then we're going to move down to our hitters. We're going to start off with a catcher in Patrick Bailey. He's at $2,600, currently averaging just under 6.5 fantasy points per game on the season. Not the greatest season for him so far. Obviously had a slower start to the season, but he's going against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Zach Gallen is on the mound, and he's a guy that has fared very well against Zach Gallen in the past. He is 4 for 11 with 2 home runs versus Zach Gallen in his career. He's currently on a 5-game hitting streak. No multi-hit games during that time span, but he does have half his home runs on the season over that 5-game hitting streak. So he's got 3 home runs, 4 double-digit performances, playing really well for a player of $2,600. Hopefully that streak continues going into Monday. So definitely do like that history that's there versus Zach Gallen as well as that recent history. The upside with Patrick Bailey at a reasonable price tag just in general. But if we look at what he's done so far in the season, he's at a .220 batting average, 6 home runs, 52 RBIs. Once again, averaging just under 6.5 fantasy points per game at $2,600. And then we're going to move over to shortstop with Mookie Betts. He's at $3,800, currently averaging just under 10.5 fantasy points per game on the season. He is going against the Philadelphia Phillies, and Ranger Suarez is the expected starting pitcher for them. He is 4 for 9 with 2 home runs in his career versus Suarez, and he has at least 1 hit in 9 out of his last 10 games, 6 multi-hit games during that time span, 4 home runs, and 8 double-digit performances. So at least in terms of past history versus a respective opponent and recent history is my preferred pay-up option for Monday's slate, although there are quite a few guys out there that I don't mind paying up for, especially depending on the stack that you do ultimately end up going with. But if we look at what Mookie Betts has been able to do so far in the season, he's up to a .259 batting average, 18 home runs, 75 RBIs. Once again, averaging just under 10.5 fantasy points per game at $3,800. And then we're going to move down to the outfield. So we're going to start off with Ivan Herrera. He's at $3,200, and he's currently averaging just under 11 fantasy points per game. He is going against the Cincinnati Reds. Zach Littell is the expected starting pitcher for them, and he is 2 for 3 with 1 home run versus Zach Littell in his career. He is currently on a 4-game hitting streak as we do speak. 1 multi-hit game during that time span, 2 home runs, and 3 double-digit performances. So Ivan Herrera has been doing really well as of late. Obviously, if you want to play him in that first base catcher slot, you can definitely do that as well. But that is probably going to be if you're not paying Patrick Bailey there. So if you want to swap over to somewhere else as a pay-down option, you can definitely do that as well. If we look at what Ivan Herrera has done so far on the season, he's at a .284 batting average, 16 home runs, 57 RBIs, once again averaging just under 11 fantasy points per game at $3,200. And then last but not least, we're going to go with Alek Thomas at $2,300 of the Arizona Diamondbacks, currently averaging about 6.5 fantasy points per game on the season. He is going against the San Francisco Giants. I believe it is Kai Wang Tang as the expected starting pitcher for them. You know, a guy that hasn't had too much experience or too much success at the major league level. Alek Thomas does have no history versus him in the past, but he does have at least 1 hit in 3 out of his last 4 games, 2 multi-hit games during that time span, 1 home run, 2 double-digit performances, and 3 games and 9 fantasy points or higher. So in terms of paydown options, Alek Thomas looks like one of the better ones on this slate overall, especially if you're going out and building a Diamondback stack, which will be a very popular one for Monday's slate overall. But if we look at what he's done so far in the season, .250 batting average, 9 home runs, 38 RBIs, once again averaging about 6.5 fantasy points per game at $2,300. But with that being said, if you go with the 5 players that do currently have this here, you have $13,100 remaining, just under $3,300 remaining per player. So a pretty balanced build the rest of the way there. Obviously, if you want to play up for some other star players, you can definitely do that and pay down at some other spots. Should make for a very interesting slate. It is a 7-game main slate just in general. We have some younger, inexperienced pitchers or pitchers with not a lot of history versus their respective opponents. So definitely a good slate to kind of take some shots and get a little bit creative just in general. But with that being said, we'll get over my cheat sheet and talk about my top GPP teams to stack for Monday's slate overall. So we're going to start off with the Arizona Diamondbacks. They're going against San Francisco Giants. Kai Wei Teng is the expected starting pitcher for them. The Diamondbacks hitters have very limited history versus him in the past. Not as much to write home about, but it is a really attractive matchup. Teng has not been effective at the major league level so far throughout his career. Then we move over to the New York Yankees. They're going against Simeon Woods Richardson of the Minnesota Twins. The Yankees have almost no history versus him in the past, although these Yankees bats have been pretty hot as of late, and Woods Richardson has kind of fallen off in his most recent starts, so it looks like a really attractive matchup overall. And then last but not least, we have the Baltimore Orioles going against Sean Burke. Very limited history versus him in the past. He did have one start versus them, I believe, earlier this season. But if you want to get to guys like Gunnar Henderson, Dylan Carlson, Ryan Mountcastle, those would be the guys to get to in terms of guys that have that experience versus him in the past. And then I'll give you guys 2 honorable mentions in the Toronto Blue Jays and the Tampa Bay Rays, as they were going against pretty inexperienced pitchers in Joe Boyle and Trey Savage making his major league debut for that Toronto Blue Jays team, and probably not going to pitch too deep into that game, as he had not been pitching too deep into the game at the minor league levels and had been primarily used in relief in his last 3 appearances down there. But with that being said, these are my core picks as well as top GPP teams to stack for Monday, September 15th. As always, if you have any questions related to MLB DFS, be sure to drop them down in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. And then once again in the morning, I'll be listing my early morning weather report of any game that does have a double-digit chance of rain or higher. And then I'll also be listing as many of these starting lineups as I can get to throughout the afternoon and early evening. So definitely make sure that you are checking up down in the comment section so that you do have the most up-to-date and relevant information as possible. But with that being said, if you are brand new to my channel, checking it out for the very first time, or have yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now we have MLB DFS in terms of the core pick videos, typically Monday through Friday. Thursdays haven't been able to get to quite as much as of late, so I've just been posting up my notes over on Patreon for free on the Thursday slates, so definitely feel free to check that out. And then I do have my CFL DFS video coming out once a week, and that typically comes out on Wednesdays. And then I will also be doing my NFL DFS core pick videos once a week, and that will be coming out either on Friday or Saturday. It's going to vary a little bit week to week, but definitely feel free to check that out if that's something you're interested in as well. And then last but not least, if you're interested in sports betting, if you're interested in prop betting, be sure to check out the links and promo codes down in the description below for BetUS and Prize Picks. If you're a brand new user to either one of those sites, when you sign up, make your initial deposit, you'll get a first match deposit bonus. For Prize Picks, it's 100% match up to $100, and then for BetUS, it's 125% match up to $2,000. So some pretty great opportunities to be had out there. If you have any other additional questions related to that whatsoever, feel free to reach out to me, whether it's down in the comment section of this video or on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport, and be more than happy to help you with that journey as well. But with that being said, that's all that I truly have for today's video. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in MLB DFS for Monday, September 15th.